In the next phase of this lesson, students will continue to look at a textbook entry from History Alive as they complete our text discussion protocol worksheet on handout number 7. Before we jump back into that process, let's try to review in our heads what we remember about this textbook. What are some words we've used to evaluate it as a source and describe it? Think in your head how you'd fill in these blanks, and then consider the blanks at the bottom that result from those conclusions. Pause the video to think for about 20 seconds. I would emphasize that the textbook is nonfiction, credible, objective, and informational, right? We use those terms in the earlier part of the lesson as a way to think about if it's trustworthy or not, if it's going to present more facts than opinions, and so on. We also pointed out that textbooks, as we have here in blue, are very dense, meaning that there's not a lot of explanation or analysis, that instead these publishers are often cramming as many facts as possible into as little a space as possible. And so you can't read this the same way as you read something like Harry Potter. Instead, you need to stop and unpack and think about what you are learning. And so we need to think often, usually at the end of paragraphs or sections, by asking ourselves questions, making connections to what we've learned in previous lessons or our own lives, to reflect on and summarize the big ideas of what we've learned. Pause the video for 30 seconds and think about these questions which speak to what we did in the first half of our text discussion guide. Possible answers would be what I have on the board, emphasizing that Rome had this legacy, that legacy continues to affect the culture of people in today's world, our thinking and values, that when we talk about the spread of ideas, we're talking about a term known as cultural diffusion, where ideas often move alongside trade routes and armies so that you're influencing thinking as much as you're reshaping borders or making money. Some of the specific ideas that we talked about, how the Romans spread, are up on the green descriptions here. That we've looked at art and architecture, we looked at engineering, and some of the classes even got into language. Your task for finishing this text discussion guide is to read each of the assigned sections, one piece at a time. You'll have to be reading them digitally. After you read the number of paragraphs and the subheadings identified, answer the questions that have blank lines. You don't need to write answers down for the ones where there are just extra questions, but if there's a blank line, I want you to write it, and I want you to think about all of the questions. I'll then share the answer key with you so that you can check your responses against mine.